Zhang Henshui's Golden Age Chapter 43. Green and red are sad and shy, telling secrets. The truth is revealed, and the wedding date is predicted. Aunt Kui leaned against the door and smiled at Jin Quan's back. When she turned around, she saw Yanxi standing in the alley next to her, sticking out his tongue. Aunt Kui said, "Why are you sneaking around here?" Yanxi said, "I caused this disaster. How can I not be worried and afraid?" Aunt Kui said, "Are you talking about Fengju's incident? What does this have to do with you? Why should you be worried and afraid?" Yanxi repeated everything that Miley asked, and was heard by Pei Feng. Yin asked, "Do you think it's terrible or not?" Aunt Kui smiled and said, "This is not a disaster for you, but a great achievement that pleases both sides." Yanxi said, "What do you mean? I don't understand." Aunt Kui said, "Isn't it because once you say it, the matter will be exposed? As for your eldest sister-in-law, although she won't remember any great merit from you, she won't say you have done anything wrong. As for your eldest brother, this has made things very good. Madam said she doesn't care, and your father also said he doesn't care. As long as we talk to Pai Feng, he can be brought home. It was originally a private matter, but now it has become public. Isn't it very convenient? In any case, it is beneficial to Fengju and not harmful. Isn't this a great achievement for you?" Yanxi said, "If it is true, it is a great achievement, but why is father so easy to talk to?" Aunt Kui shrugged her nose and pointed at the tip of her nose with her index finger, and said, "Humph, that's not bragging. It was all thanks to me who helped him to get it sorted. Do you believe it?" Yanxi said, "Why shouldn't I believe it?" Aunt Kui said, "It's good that you believe it. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can ask me to help you get it sorted. Although I can't do it very well, it won't be a bad thing." When Yanxi heard this, he stood straight in front of Aunt Kui and bowed to her 3 times. Aunt Kui asked, "Why? Are you going to ask me for something right away?" Yanxi smiled and said, "I don't have anything to ask you now, but I think it's inevitable. It's rare that you say such good things, so I can't miss the opportunity. I'll bow to you 3 times and put down the deposit. When I ask you for something in the future, you can't refuse it after you accept my deposit. Do you think my idea is good?" Aunt Kui laughed and scolded, "Young children, don't learn well, and act so cunningly. I don't like this." Yanxi said, "I have something to ask you, but you are not happy. But you have to look sad?" Aunt Kui said, "Don't make a fuss here. Go to your mother's room to listen to the good news. When you hear it, write me a message. Don't forget it." Yanxi heard it and really went to Mrs. Jin's room. As soon as he entered the courtyard gate, Qingqiu was standing by the outer courtyard gate, nodding and waving, as if she had something important to say to him. Yanxi walked over and asked, "What's the matter? Tell me." Qingqiu smiled and said, "A good friend called to invite you to dinner. Brother Jinrong has been looking for you everywhere and is sweating profusely." Yanxi said, "Is the person who invited me to dinner a good friend?" Qingqiu said, "No, because this friend is a lady." Yanxi said, "How do you know it's a lady? Who is she?" Qingqiu said, "I don't know who it is. When Jinrong was looking for you, I continued to look for your phone. I asked her to wait a while, but she said she didn't need to wait and would call me later. I heard that the voice was a girl, so I knew she was a lady." Yanxi smiled and said, "Don't go inside and talk nonsense." Qingqiu said, "Seventh master is like this. He doesn't know what's good for him. People are looking for you everywhere, but you suspect us." Yanxi smiled and said, "Asshole. You said this to me without knowing the difference between big and small. I'm going to hit you with a big bang." Qingqiu heard this, turned around and ran away with a smile. Yanxi found Jinrong and asked, and then he knew that Qingqiu had called. She said that they were going to have dinner at Zuelu right away, and that she had something important to say, so she asked Yanxi to go there. Yanxi thought, if she had something to say, why didn't she say it at home, but invited him to a big restaurant? That was strange. At that time, although there was still a car at home, he didn't take it, but hired a rickshaw to go to Zuelu. When he arrived at Zuelu, the waiter there recognized him and smiled. "Seventh master is here. Someone came earlier and was waiting for you here." Yanxi said, "I know." So he went upstairs and came to a small single room. He saw Qingqiu standing there, holding the back of the chair with her hand, looking at the landscape painting on the wall, and seemed to be very bored. So he smiled and said, "Are you here early? You look like you are going to treat us today." Yanxi took off his hat and hung it on the hook, while tilting his head to talk to her. She turned around and said to Yanxi indifferently, "Why are you so busy? I don't see you often." Yanxi said, "I didn't know you had something to tell me. If you knew, you would have come a long time ago. What is it? Do you need to treat me to a meal before you tell me?" Qingqiu didn't say anything and sat down at the chairman's seat. Yanxi hurriedly sat down at the corner of the table. Although Yanxi was talking and laughing freely, he stopped laughing when he saw her frowning and her eyes looking down, so he asked her, "How is it? Is there anything difficult?" Qingqiu sighed and said, "I am sacrificing for you, no matter what. But I still have a mother, and I have to think about her when something happens. Do you want her to sacrifice with me?" Yanxi said, "You said this out of the blue. I don't understand." At this point, the waiter had already come in to serve the dishes. Usually, when Qingqiu eats Western food, she will consider the menu again and again. This time, she just glanced at the menu casually and pushed it to the table without saying much. Yanxi was full of doubts, and he was not interested in eating, so he did not say anything and just nodded to the waiter. Seeing this, the waiter went to prepare. Yanxi asked, "What do you want to say? Tell me first, so that I won't be anxious." Qingqiu said, "What are you busy with? Eat first, and I'll tell you later." Yanxi said, "Why don't we talk while eating? Otherwise, I can't eat." Qingqiu said, "You can't eat. I can't eat." Yanxi said, "Oh my god, if you have anything to say, just tell me, I'm so bored." At this time, Qingqiu's brows relaxed, and she smiled again. She said, "Let me tell you a riddle. Guess it. It's the saying that you reap what you sow." Yanxi said, "What does this mean? I don't understand it anymore." Qingqiu said, "You are still doing it on purpose. You still don't understand?" Yanxi said, speaking properly, "Why should I be cunning? I really don't understand." Qingqiu said, "You look so pretty, but it turns out you are a silver-plated spearhead." Yanxi said, "Don't scold me. I have already chosen a good name for myself, which is an embroidered pillow. You can imagine that the outside of the pillow is all silk and satin, and inside, there are wheat husks, straw, reed catkins, and duck down." Qingqiu smiled and said, "If there is duck down and reed catkins inside, that's fine." Yanxi said, "Yes. There is only straw and buckwheat husks inside my pillow." Qingqiu said, "Since you don't understand, I'll tell you later." Yanxi knew from her look that she was bothering the waiter, so he had to stop asking and waited until the coffee was served and the waiter didn't come. Qingqiu blushed and said, "Didn't I tell you long ago? It's the first time. Why should we do it again? You always say it's no big deal, and you give all kinds of reasons. I also told you last time that we should always be on guard, but you don't care." "Look," Yanxi said, "how is it? Did your aunt say anything?" Qingqiu said, "She still doesn't know, but if she doesn't find a way to remedy the situation, she will know soon. I can't be polite today. Let me ask you, when are you willing to make it public?" Yanxi said, "Is it just for this? Anyway, within this year." Qingqiu's face became serious, and he said, "Serious is serious, and jokes are jokes. Why are you so casual when people talk to you?" Yanxi said, "I'm not casual. This is what I think in my heart." Qingqiu said, "These are what you really think. Don't you care about the benefits?" Yanxi said, "What benefits are there?" Qingqiu frowned and said, "You still don't understand. You're driving me crazy." After saying that, she stamped her foot and said, "You've made me suffer." As she spoke, she took out the fountain pen from her button and took out a business card from her handbag. On the back of the business card, she wrote a line of words, "Flowing water, falling flowers, and spring is gone. There is no tide in the Zunyang River." After she finished writing, she threw it in front of Yanxi and said, "Take a look." Yanxi took it and looked at it, then smiled and said, "A line of lyrics, a line of poetry. It's put together very naturally." Qingqiu said, "Don't just look at the words. Think about it carefully." As she spoke, she placed her arms flat on the table, crossed her fingers, supported her chin, and looked at Yanxi. Yanxi took the business card and read it twice in his hand, then said with a smile, "If it was a year ago, you would have written it in vain. After more than half a year of hard work, thanks to the teacher's teaching, I now understand the implication of your words. But I guess this is not the case. You just scared me." Qingqiu said, "I'm so anxious, but you still don't care." Yanxi said, "It's strange. How could it be such a coincidence? How long has it been?" Qingqiu blushed and rested her head on her arms to hide her face. Yanxi said, "You just said I was joking. What about you?" Qingqiu raised her head and said, "You're so stupid to ask. How long can it take? Right now, I'm in good health and have always been very punctual with my dates. It's been half a month this time. At first, I thought it was a disease, but now I think about it, it's definitely not. What do you think we should do?" Yanxi took the coffee cup and sipped it slowly and absent-mindedly. He frowned and said, "If it's true, it's a tricky matter. I can't think of a solution for the time being. Let me think about it." Qingqiu said, "How should I think about it? I feel that one day at a time, this matter must be done. If you want to think about it, I can't wait." Yanxi said, "Why are you so anxious? Even if it's up to you, we'll still need a month to prepare for our wedding." Qingqiu said, "I think so too. Why don't you just take me to the hospital and solve this problem?" Yanxi smiled and said, "I absolutely don't agree with this. It's simply against the harmony of heaven and earth to say such a thing. Can you bear to do this?" Qingqiu said, "I have no choice. What can I do if I can't bear it?" Yanxi said, "This method is not good after all. Please give me 3 days. I will give you a definite answer within 3 days. What do you think? Things have come to this point, and it can't be solved just like that." Qingqiu frowned and said, "Since I found out the day before yesterday, I have been thinking about it all the time. I wonder if you have any solution? Now that you have said it, there is no way. You really make it difficult for me. Waiting for 3 days is not a big deal, but you want me to. You've been anxious for 3 days. Yanxi said, "Although you've been anxious for 3 days, I think as long as you figure out a way, it will be a once and for all thing. Maybe this little trick will help us get better." Qingqiu stretched out her right index finger, scratched her face, and said with a smile, "Thank you for saying the word little trick." Yanxi said, "Isn't that the truth?" As he spoke, he stood up, held Qingqiu's shoulders, and said, "Don't worry, the future is optimistic anyway. I've thought of a trick a long time ago. If there is any difficulty in the family, I will use my last move and use the money to go abroad. When I get to a foreign country, no one can control what I do. What do you think of my idea?" Qingqiu said, "I just can't bear to leave my mother, otherwise, it would be a good idea." Yanxi said with a smile, "I said so too. I'm afraid you can't bear to leave your aunt. But this method is the last resort. I will certainly come up with a more perfect method within these 3 days. Don't worry." Qingqiu said with a smile, "You are not sure about what you say. You said it was so good in front of me, but you will forget it as soon as you turn around." Yanxi said, "I may not pay attention to ordinary jokes. When it comes to serious matters, I will never be able to finish it." Qingqiu heard that he had a way, and felt relieved. Seeing that there were fruits on the table, he picked up a pear, peeled the skin around the knife, peeled it cleanly, pinched the stem with 2 fingers, and put it on Yanxi's plate. Yanxi leaned forward and said with a smile, "Excuse me. You must be very tired from peeling the pears. I feel embarrassed to eat it all by myself. Let's share half." Yanxi took the knife and was about to cut it. Qingqiu pressed his hand and said, "There are plenty. I want to eat it. Just peel another one. You eat it." Yanxi put down the knife and smiled. "I remembered it again. I remember one time when we were sharing pears. You stopped me. It's the same idea." Qingqiu smiled and said, "I'm not superstitious. I just don't want to eat these cold things." Yanxi took the knife and patted his right cheek with a flat knife. She laughed and said, "Yes, I am such a careless person. You can't eat raw or cold food." Qingqiu said, "Nonsense. That's not what I meant. Don't talk nonsense. I never like fruit." Yanxi said, "Can you come out to eat in the evening and go to the movies together?" Qingqiu said, "I am so confused. How can I have the mind to go to the movies? Even you should go back early and lie down to think about it." Yanxi laughed and said, "Why are you so busy at this moment?" So they paid the bill and went downstairs together. Yanxi said, "Do you want me to take you home?" Qingqiu said, "I'm not going home. I'm going to see a classmate. You should go back quickly." Yanxi saw that she was so anxious for no reason. Although it was ridiculous, it was also pitiful. He had to follow her words, put everything aside, and go home. When he got home, he lay on the sofa and thought slowly about what method he could use to solve this problem. However, this matter was a personal secret, and he could not discuss it with a third person. His 3 sisters might give him some advice, but it was a private matter, and he could not bring himself to speak out. His 3 brothers were all useless, and their advice might not be useful. Other people would not care. After thinking for a long time, he actually came up with a roundabout method, which was to ask Jin Rong to invite the 4th uncle, Liu Shuhua. Jin Rong smiled and said, "7th master is not very cooperative with him." Yanxi frowned and said, "Go. Don't talk nonsense." Seeing that he looked worried and might have something serious to do, Jin Rong did not dare to say more and invited Shuhua. As soon as Liu Shuhua entered the room, he smiled and said, "You don't have to mention it. I have already guessed what you want to say. Have you found a house for me?" Yanxi said, "No, please sit down and talk slowly." Then he stood up and closed the door, and directed Liu Shuhua to sit on a sofa, and smiled and said, "You should congratulate me first." As he said that, he raised his eyebrows and looked at his face. Liu Shuhua said, "What are you congratulating me for? Did you win money?" Yanxi said, "Why don't you guess that I have a good thing? Am I such a bad person?" As he said that, he raised his hand and knocked himself on the head. Liu Shuhua smiled and said, "I'm sorry for my words. I thought you must have decided to go to a school." Yanxi said, "You are really insulting me. Which school can I go to?" Liu Shuhua smiled and said, "That's difficult. I say that you are not doing serious things, but you don't want to. I say that you are doing serious things, and you say that I am insulting you. How should I put it? I can't guess such an improper thing, so you just say it yourself." Yanxi smiled, but held back the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Yin said, "You'd better guess it. Think about the proudest thing in life, and you will guess it." Liu Shuhua smiled and said, "The proudest thing in life." As he said this, he scratched his hair and smiled. "Yes, is it becoming an official?" Yanxi smiled and said, "I don't need to be an official yet. It can be a couplet with being an official. You think about it again." Liu Shuhua smiled and stamped his foot, and said, "This time I guessed it completely. You and Miss Bai are officially engaged and are about to live together?" Yanxi said, "After guessing, you only guessed half of it." Liu Shuhua said, "Why only guessed half of it? Is there anything further than getting married?" Yanxi said, "It's not a further step. You guessed the wrong person. My opponent is not. The surname is Bai." Liu Shuhua said, "If it's not Bai, what's the surname? I haven't heard that there is a third party who matches your qualifications." Yanxi said, "Not only you don't know, there are many people who don't know." Liu Shuhua smiled and said, "Great, you are about to get married, and your lover is still keeping a secret. You are really amazing. Tell me, who is this person?" Yanxi held his hand, shook it several times and said, "Don't shout, don't shout. If you shout, this will be bad." Liu Shuhua said, "Then why?" Yanxi smiled and said, "Of course it has its own rules. I ask you, now I want to announce my marriage to a woman who no one knows." Liu Shuhua said, "Stop talking nonsense. Tell me who this person is." Yanxi just swayed his legs and smiled without saying a word. Liu Shuhua asked, "What do you mean? Are you still shy and don't want to tell me?" Yanxi said, "Why should I be shy? But this matter is very long. Let me tell you slowly." Liu Shuhua said, "Just tell me slowly. I don't want to rush to listen." At this time, Yanxi had to tell the details of how he met Qingqiu and how they had made an engagement. Liu Shuhua said, "No wonder your sister said that you and Miss Leng are very good, so that's it. What do you mean by calling me here? Do you want me to inform the court?" Yanxi said, "Not only to inform, we are planning to get married. I hope you can tell the court and prepare some money for me." Liu Shuhua said, "Why are you so anxious? Since you are planning to get married now, you should have made it public long ago. Why are you doing it at the last minute?" Yanxi said, "I didn't plan to get married now. Because I have to get married suddenly now, I have to come to ask you to intercede for me." Liu Shuhua said, "Why do you want to get married suddenly?" Yanxi smiled and said, "You are talking nonsense. When love reaches its end, it will naturally happen. What's there to be confused about?" Liu Shuhua looked at Yanxi's face, smiled, shook his head twice, and then said, "A person like you talks about love like this, saying that it is clean and there are no other problems. I don't quite believe it. Are you confused and have some problems?" Yanxi blushed and said, "What's the problem? Don't talk nonsense, miss. Leng and I started as friends, and then we talked about marriage in a proper way. There was no improper procedure. Liu Shuhua said, "It's not that the procedures for your engagement are improper. I'm just afraid that after the engagement, everyone will become more and more unscrupulous. Won't there be problems?" Yanxi listened to him and was silent. Liu Shuhua said, "Honestly, have I guessed what's bothering you?" Yanxi said, "Everyone has their own difficulties. I can't say them, but everyone will know about them later. I don't have any other requests now. Can you tell the fourth sister to go and talk to the two old ladies?" Liu Shuhua said, "This is a favor I'm happy to do. What's wrong with that?" Yanxi said, "That's good. If the matter is successful, I will thank you very much." Liu Shuhua said, "You don't have to thank me. If it's not done well, just complain less." Then he asked Qingqiu about her personality, talent, appearance, and the situation of her family. Yanxi said everything was good, without any criticism. Liu Shuhua said, "That's a good idea. I think the two elders will not object to it. However, in this case, Miss Bai Shuju will be eliminated. Wouldn't you embarrass her?" Yanxi smiled and said, "It's not embarrassing at all. We are still friends. Under the current circumstances, a man can only have one official wife. How can I comfort her?" Liu Shuhua smiled and said, "Of course, but I think Miss Bai will always be embarrassed, and you will inevitably offend someone." Yanxi said, "Are you talking about Shuju's brother?" Liu Shuhua said, "It's irrelevant. He is completely laissez-faire about Shuju's marriage. It doesn't matter whether you marry her or not." Yanxi said, "Then who else cares about this matter?" Liu Shuhua said, "Doesn't your third sister-in-law want to help you get married? This won't work." Yanxi said, "Speaking of this, it's not a problem. I believe that Sister Yufan, at least, does not distinguish between her brother-in-law and her cousin. She can't be surprised because I don't marry her cousin." Liu Shuhua said, "She is not surprised, but she is so happy that you have completely dispelled her fear." Yanxi smiled and said, "This is a small matter. Don't worry about it. Even if Sister Yufan is really unhappy, I can't care about it." Liu Shuhua said, "Okay, I will discuss it with your fourth sister. It is absolutely uncertain whether it will succeed or not." Yanxi said, "When will you reply to my letter?" Liu Shuhua said, "I haven't discussed a solution yet. How can I decide the time to reply to you first?" Yanxi smiled and said, "It's because I am too impatient, and I want to get the result immediately. Even in that aspect, I should have replied to people's letters earlier." Liu Shuhua stood up, smiled, and patted Yanxi on the shoulder, and said, "You are really impatient, child." When Yanxi wanted to say something else, he had already left. At this time, Yanxi didn't go out to play. He took a novel and read it on the couch. After reading a few pages, he couldn't read anymore, so he left the book and came to Daozi's place. He first walked past the window, as if he didn't mean to pass by here. But he listened carefully, and didn't hear Liu Shuhua's voice. So after walking past, he turned back. Seeing Daozi holding his niece Jia and making her laugh, he also walked in to chat with her and make the child laugh. After playing for a while, he asked, "Where is your brother-in-law?" Daozi said, "Didn't you call him over?" Yanxi said, "Yes, but he only said a few words and left early." Daozi said, "He left at that time and hasn't come back yet." Yanxi saw that Shuhua was not here, so he said a few words and left. In the evening, after dinner, he ran to the corridor outside Daozi's house again. Daozi heard Yanxi coughing slightly in the room, so he said, "Isn't that Lockie? What is he doing walking around outside?" Yanxi said, "Nothing. Where's my brother-in-law?" Daozi said, "He hasn't come back yet." Yanxi heard that Liu Shuhua was not here, so he left. Daozi saw that there was no sound outside the window, so he didn't say anything. Liu Shuhua didn't come back until 12 o'clock. As soon as Daozi saw him come in, he asked, "Did you promise to do something for Lao Qi?" Liu Shuhua first looked at his wife's face, and then asked, "Why do you ask this?" Daozi said, "Lao Qi is like an ant on a hot stone. He came to me 3 or 4 times today, but he just asked if you were here. He refused to tell me why." Liu Shuhua stamped his foot, and said, "Oh, I forgot about him." After that, he laughed and said, "This kid is really too impatient. How can he do things so quickly?" Daozi said, "What is it? Maybe there is an urgent social event and he is short of some money, so he wants you to arrange it for him, right?" Shuhua said, Money? This matter is 24 points more urgent than asking for money. So he sat down and told him in detail what Yanxi had said. Daozi said, I see. If he wants, then there's nothing wrong with it. But what about this girl? Liu Shuhua said, according to him, she is rare in heaven and earth. But he said that your 5th and 6th sisters have seen her, and they are very supportive. Daozi said, if Minzi and Runzi like her, then she can't be that bad. Let me find out first. Liu Shuhua said, Minzi has been to her house, so you'd better ask her. But you have to tell your 5th sister not to make it public before you have communicated with the 2 elders. If you make it public, if it doesn't work, it will be very embarrassing for old 7. And Miss Bai will laugh at him. This is what he can't stand the most. Daozi smiled and said, don't I know this? I'll go talk to her this night when there's no one around. Then he got up and went to Minzi's room. It was already past 1 o'clock. Minzi and Runzi came back from the movie, and they cooked a small pot of wheat flour porridge on the liquor stove and sat down to eat. On the table was a dish of fragrant radish with oil and vinegar, a dish of mixed cucumber slices, a dish of fresh asparagus, and another dish of snowflake sugar, which tasted delicious. Daozi first lifted a corner of the door curtain, took a look, walked in, and said with a smile, you're really comfortable, having a midnight snack at this time. Runzi said, we did it ourselves, and it's not difficult for you. How can it be comfortable? Daozi saw that there was a red gold earpick stuck in Anan's head, so he took it off, wiped the needle tip with his handkerchief, poked a piece of asparagus in the plate, tilted his head, and put it into his mouth to eat. She smiled and said, very good, crispy, and fragrant. Runzi said, you are praising me like this because you want to eat another one. In fact, dragon beard seaweed is not fragrant. Daozi said, dragon beard seaweed is not fragrant, but it is always fragrant when it is cooked. I like this fresh dragon beard seaweed. Not to mention eating it, just looking at its thin green strips is interesting. Runzi pushed the cucumber slices with chopsticks and smiled. This is also green. How can you not say it is good? Daozi said, why is it not good? I just love its color, but I don't care when eating it. This is called the art of eating. Do you believe me or not? Runzi said, eating is eating, drinking is drinking. Why should eating be artful? Minzi smiled and said, that's true, but you can't say she is talking nonsense. I often go to Donggan Market and see those fruit stalls with piles of large and small fruits, which are very beautiful. And there is a faint fruit fragrance in it, which is very pleasant. Daozi encouraged Zhang said, that's right. I have had this feeling for a long time, but I didn't say it out loud, so I asked you to say it out loud. As for the time when the fruits look best, I think it will be after September. At that time, all the fruits will be almost ready. Minzi said, what do you think is the best looking? Daozi said, of course, big apples and spherical watermelons are also beautiful. In addition, there are papayas, bergamots, mandarin oranges, and oranges. Pears are not very interesting, and persimmons have a good color, but an elegant shape. Minzi said, how about grapes? Daozi said, a whole bunch of rose-purple grapes with some fresh green leaves is also good. Minzi said, the color of the crabapple is very similar to that of apples, and it is interesting in that it is small. Daozi said, probably the least beautiful is the banana. Runzi said, in the middle of the night, 4th sister came here just to discuss whether the fruits are beautiful or not. Daozi smiled and said, of course not. He stretched out two fingers and made an introduction. All right, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.